Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of RadialSpark Radio. With us today, we've got Justin Ludlow, myself, Michael Rockford, and of course, in the background, Peyton Gherkin, supporting us and making this broadcast possible. Guys, say hello.
Hey, guys.
Awesome. So today we've got a bit of a different episode coming up since Justin just got back with a couple of other team members from TrailblazerDX. Or what are they calling it now?
TrailblazerDX, and I believe that's as of last year or the year before. Before that, it was Trailhead DX.
Yeah, Trailblazer. He was blazing trails in San Francisco.
Blazing trails.
And he's got a lot of new information to share with us today. So this format's gonna be a little bit different. It's more gonna be an interview style format since I didn't get to go. I had to stay home. My wife got to go, which I'm still jealous about.
Had a lot of fun hanging out with her.
Yeah, I would have had a lot of fun hanging out with me too, but but I got stuck here. Yeah, but so let's just dive into this. So Justin, I know that you had gone there to see, a couple of specific sessions. You're like, hey, like there's these 3 sessions. I wanted to see these 3 things. Obviously, you went, I think to all of them, or maybe one of them you didn't get to, and you had to see afterwards. But was there anything at Trailhead or Trailblazer DX that surprised you, or things that you didn't really expect coming up that you're really looking forward to, or what stood out that you weren't expecting?
There was one thing that surprised me, and I'll be honest, it shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. But there were, like, in my mind, like, call it 3 big banner items that I thought was cool. Now, 2 of them were at TrailblazerDX proper. They were actually sessions there that I'd love to talk about today. One of them is the internal Heroku and Data Cloud teams at Salesforce actually brought forward a Heroku and Data Cloud together architecture, and where some of our better together articles, some of we've talked about engineering, how these things can plug together. What they talk about in their session is more enabling robust Heroku experiences driven by data insights and activations, which anybody familiar with Marketing Cloud, like Data Cloud, has a similar concept of activating on your data and triggering something. So using those to then feed out things that happen then in Heroku, and there's actually native tie-ins there now. So there's some cool stuff there that I think is exciting to talk about, and kind of validating to see Salesforce recognize some of the product synergies that we've been calling out for a couple months. And then the other thing that I thought was kind of cool is they've started launching the Heroku team, specifically a fleet of some sample applications that are using AI on Heroku and how that works. I will say the thing that surprised me, but shouldn't have, and this might be the silliest thing. This was actually from the Heroku developer meetup. So this was on Tuesday before the proper TDX kicked off. But during their developer meetup, while they were laying out all their plans and what they were doing, one of the things they announced is going to be Gen AI inference models natively on Heroku. So the idea that you could provision an AI with your Heroku CLI, tack it onto your app as an add-on, and have that all integrated, not necessarily in and of itself revolutionary when you're okay, we've got ChatGPT, we've got these other things, but the idea that a lot of people that use Heroku might be using it with private spaces, maybe even shield private spaces. There is a concern about securing the data they're acting on, the things they're doing. So being able to create an inference AI model and host that as an add-on in Heroku alongside your data and deliver that value inside of Salesforce's trust barrier. To me, that's making AI more accessible than it sounds when I just say, oh, Heroku's entering the AI game a little bit.
Yeah, and just to decode some of the language for
some
other members of the audience there. Yeah. So when Justin's talking about private spaces or shield, Heroku, just a quick recap, has 3 different runtimes. They have a common runtime where you're sharing resources with anyone else.
Yeah.
You have a private space where you have your own dedicated virtual private cloud. So it's your it's not really bare metal machines, but it's your machines. You own them. They're in your private cloud. No one else has access to. And then you have a shield private space, which adds a layer of encryption on top of that, which is typically used in the financial and healthcare industries, given the level of security required, but also some other customers too that are looking for that additional level of security. And for those of you that have paid attention to this podcast a little bit or seen some of our articles, we've been talking a lot about ChatGPT, OpenAI's platform, and integrating that into your day-to-day process within Salesforce. And although you can take some of those models and host them somewhere privately, or pay for your own private models, you're still having to go over the open internet with those requests and get that data back. And there are ways to secure that. Like, we're not going to go into that detail, but for some customers are like, I just want that little extra level of security because I'm dealing with, let's say, a diagnostic and patient information. And I really want to train my AI and my data.
Not cool.
Yeah. So what Justin's saying here is that Heroku is now laying the framework where you're able to deploy those resources within your own virtual private cloud to do your own data training and to do your own and host your own AI model.
This ties into some really cool things. Because if I may, stop me if I get too far ahead, Mike.
Don't go too far ahead, because we'll come back to AI because I want to talk about AI a second. Because we always talk about AI, like every other episode we're talking about AI.
A lot of stuff coming out for Heroku enhancements and Heroku for AI enhancements.
So we'll get to that. Let's talk a little bit about Data Cloud, because you and I have put together a series of articles.
Yes.
Called our Better Together series. And it starts off with Heroku MuleSoft, Better Together, Heroku Data Cloud, Better Together, and then ends up with Best Together when we tie all those three pieces together: Heroku, MuleSoft, Data Cloud. Yep. And we come up with some sample use cases in the retail and online gaming space, distributed systems and doing not threat detection, but system outage protection.
Yes.
And mitigation. So we've talked a little bit about that, but when you went and you saw that they were talking about Heroku and Data Cloud, you must have been like, yo, that's ours. We've been talking about this for months.
I will give them, it's not 100% ours after having seen the session.
What's different?
It was like, oh my gosh, these guys are just finally listening to us, but then taking credit for it. But no.
So what was it? Dive in a little bit deeper. Like, what did they do differently? What are they? Because again, like we talked a little bit about some sample use cases, some sample ideas of how you tie these products together based on our experience. But really, there's an infinite level of variability here. Yeah. What is Salesforce focusing on with these two tools, Heroku and Data Cloud in particular?
Yeah, well, and I would say right out of the gate, like big banner headline item for this is where a lot of our articles were focused on, like, hey, how does Heroku make Data Cloud better? Like a lot of our articles were using Heroku as IT glue to be like, look at how flexible and powerful this platform is to really tie your clouds together with your outside of Salesforce ecosystem stuff. There's a little bit of that in their session, but like the big piece is actually like Data Cloud augmenting application experiences on Heroku. So the example that the gentleman presenting the demo, his name's David Beliles, brilliant architect. Love working with that guy every chance I get. He has an e-commerce app hosted on Heroku that's built, and he's talking about, hey, I don't know how many of you out there, like, are you logging every page visited, or are you logging every error that occurs in your app? Like the new gold standard as we deal with bigger and bigger data, and especially with like AI inference engines, is logging every click every user makes in your application, and then like doing pattern analysis on that. So like if you're e-commerce, it's like this person's clicking through like every 10 seconds. They always click on the black t-shirts or the black clothes. Like, you can start figuring out their preferences and inferring that, or getting to a point where it's like they click and all of a sudden they stop clicking for a while, but they haven't made it all the way to checkout. It's like, what happened here? So they start by setting it up where, they hook up the Heroku application to Data Cloud ingestion using a JWT token so that you can stream every click event into your data cloud alongside all the other data you have there. You relate it back to your contact, your customer, all your other data that's coming in there. And what that's doing is effectively taking every user interaction that happens on your Heroku application and feeding that into your data lake for trend analysis, et cetera. So that's step one. And that in of itself, I was like, okay, I like where they're going.
So to recap here, effectively what they're doing is that let's say you have an e-commerce app or an e-commerce app enhanced by Heroku, like a mobile app deployment with B2C or B2B commerce, whatever it might be. You're tracking clicks, you're tracking abandoned carts, you're tracking just where people are hanging on the page, right? So you're tracking user session activity, and you're streaming that through, let's say, Heroku Kafka for a data piping streaming. That's running through your Heroku application, getting published to a particular pipe on Kafka, and that's being consumed, I imagine, or listened to by Data Cloud, and it's going into your data lake.
Yeah,
something like
Data
that.
Cloud's harmonized layer is what they call it, and that's like where they map all their inbound events into whatever their data model piece is.
So you've got a Heroku event bus that you've created to your homegrown apps or your customer facing applications, which Heroku's great at, and then you're funneling everything into this data lake.
And Data Cloud does provide that event bus, which I thought was kind of cool. So from your Heroku app, you can literally, like, in real time, it's like for every click, just have a service in your app that's like track the click, track what was clicked, like the user, the timestamp, everything, and pass it through, just like spit it at them.
So you don't necessarily need to have
developers. You don't necessarily need like Kafka or some kind of middle layer broker.
So when would you need a middle layer broker?
Well, so where they were bringing in Kafka into their use case, and this is like I said, so this data ingestion of the click events, this was just like step one. So what David talks about is like, okay, we now know what everybody's doing in the app at all times. And like, we might not be tracking the higher level semantics of those operations, but we can infer all of them because we know what every button click does. And based on an order of button clicks in a certain amount of time, we're like, okay, we know what happened here. But they're like,
so when you say we know everything, what every button click does, or what every page is, like, you have to, like, are we talking AI?
Code that event in. I mean,
okay,
you could theoretically AI augment that, but like, you're submitting what in their demo they called it a Heroku click event. So you're submitting a click event that's like, it was at this timestamp, it was this user, they were.
You're adding a level of metadata on top of. So like, even a middleware example then would be to add that little level of metadata,
just to
just to provide the context.
Yeah, you could code that as API middleware in your application API. Okay. Just make sure you're capturing it as those interactions come through, which I think is cool.
No, that's super cool. So I mean, again, just to simplify it, like, the idea is that you have an app, like, you've got APIs, like, you as the app designer, when you go on button 13, which I know it's not going to be labeled that, but like button 13, that's like, hey, checkout, right? Or hey, click to add to cart on this page. Like, you as a developer know that is all you need to do is add a little context to those button clicks when you pass it off to the API, and then it knows, like, hey, this is the black shirt checkout, whatever.
Yeah, they were adding this black shirt to their cart.
Okay, got it.
And so once you get all that data in, the next thing David starts talking about is like, well, you have it, you can learn from it, but the whole advantage of collecting the data in real time is to be able to act on it in real time. And so, he's using everybody's favorite sample company, Acme, which, just for fun, I realized, I think it was earlier this year, that Acme stands for a company that makes everything. So in this case, Acme's making camping gear. And in particular, they've got this nice outdoor duffel bag, but there's been a recall on it. The battery pack that's actually integrated into the duffel bag, so that like you can charge it, you'll never lose it as long as you have your duffel, and then you can charge your phone, charge any of your outdoor gear, so that like you don't get stranded without power. But there's been an issue with like the batteries short circuiting and just like draining themselves, not holding a charge. And so he comes up with a scenario that it's like, we've got this technology in place for data collection, and now we have a user come in to buy this duffel bag, like they're adding it to their cart. We know there's a recall, there's an issue, we haven't put the fix out yet. How do we protect the brand's image and experience for this user? And so the idea is that when something like this happens, when a warranty or a recall situation that's probably being set up, let's say in Service Cloud, comes in, and that's getting fed into Data Cloud as a different node, but that can come in and we can see, hey, this product that has a recall on it just got added to a cart, and that can trigger an activation on the data. And this is very similar to like between Data Cloud and Marketing Cloud. If you're familiar with Marketing Cloud, the way Data Cloud handles this is basically the same. Like the trigger on the activations, very much like a journey builder experience. So if you're familiar with one, you should be good with the other. But to effectively say like, oh, somebody's added this this duffel bag with a recall on it to their shopping cart they haven't checked out yet. So that could trigger an activation that then grabs their user information, their session, and that can make several possible actions related specifically to Heroku. One, it can publish to an Apache Kafka on Heroku topic directly from Data Cloud. That's now an action that's available in there. So you can just push something through like a pub sub model to get that back into Heroku and act on it if you want. The other thing you can do is a Heroku webhook, where you can make a call out to like a webhook endpoint you've defined on your Heroku services to act on it. So let's say that in your e-commerce experience on Heroku, Acme has a chat agent. In the demo, they used something called Copilot to set up an AI-enabled chat agent. But once that's done with these webhook or Apache Kafka tie-ins to push this information back to Heroku, basically Data Cloud can see, we just had a click-in event come in that added this defective product to a shopping cart. Before they check out, we want to let them know. So either through Kafka or through the webhook, we push back to the main system and say, hey, we want to do a push notification to this user through the chatbot and say, hey, we noticed you added this duffel. It does have a defective battery in it. We currently have them on recall, but then with like the AI enabled chat that knows all your other products and maybe everything else in your data lake, you can then say, we would recommend one of these 3 other similar products. Might not be exactly what you're looking for, but the idea is you're leveraging the power of that real-time interaction and integration between Heroku and Data Cloud to intercept a down the road service case that would come in for a defective product, and then not just calling out to your customer that there's a problem, but proposing several substitute solutions that could be best fit. And again, you can inform that from all the other stuff, like this guy always buys black, sell him the black one. That you smooth what would have been a bumpy customer experience before they even buy the product.
Yeah, so sorry, one sec.
Not a problem.
So when we kind of go back to the architecture that we had proposed too, when you're tying in like ERPs, billing systems, partner distributors, all those other different systems or applications that we have with various different other subsidiaries or just other divisions within a large organization. And we showed how MuleSoft can help tie that in and centralize that data. If Heroku is your hold on one second. It sounds like my mic screwed up. Give me a sec.
Yeah, you are a little quiet and distorted, just a little bit.
Yeah, I had an issue.
Well, while you troubleshoot your mic thing, I think I know where you were going there, and that was actually one of the examples that David used the Heroku webhook for, is that when you activate on a piece of data, maybe there is additional data that's not already in your Data Cloud data. Like it could be something from your ERP, from your OMS system. Like you could be looking for more real-time data that you haven't yet fed into your Data Cloud in a real-time fashion. So you can make that webhook call out to Heroku as part of an activation to say, hey, I need some, supplementary details on this thing. And
So do I, hold on. Do I
You're
sound
better.
okay now?
Yeah, much better.
So yeah, sorry. That's kind of where I was going to with the supplemental details. But I mean, the main thing I was thinking about is that in our use case where we had that online retailer and it's like, hey, this product was out, let's go find out when it's going to come back, and we have chat enabled AI. Like, it was pretty much the same use case that we had already discussed.
Yes.
But we're talking to another system down the road before we've even gotten to Service Cloud. Like, there's not even a ticket yet. But this kind of comes in, like, this kind of really comes full circle, where if Heroku is the hub, or it's like the point in which a lot of your customer facing applications are meeting, like where your customers are meeting with, they're hitting her, like you've got an app on Heroku, that's what your customers interacting with, but you have this, it's the hub and the spoke model that's tying in everything, with Data Cloud as your data lake over here, Salesforce over here, which is tying and feeding that data in there. Again, no matter where you're coming from, whether it's your ERP, OMS, like all these other different systems is kind of flowing into here, and you can pass it off to Data Cloud to track all that actionability that we just talked about, to then pass back to an AI that you can then maybe even you're hosting your own, which is like looking like down the road, which is going to be the end state, which is feeding off all the data and we could refer to our previous episode. We talked about vector databases. Data Cloud is one, why that's important for AI. Again, like kind of comes back. So this whole thing ties together and kind of really focuses in on the thing that we were talking about. It's really cool that Salesforce is like talking about this and not just coming at it the same direction we did, but a very similar one with other add-ons. Because again, for everyone who's listening, like the stuff that Justin talked about isn't like wildly creative. Like it's not like, oh, no one can think of this. We're just scratching the surface of some of the stuff you can do with these tools in your toolkit. And I think it's really cool to start like, oh, well, we could actually do this now, or actually we could pull in this stuff, or, you know.
Well, and here's the thing that I think's crazy about it, right? As you said, the technical implementation here is not too bonkers. Like, it's elegant, it's clean, but it doesn't take an overly creative mind to imagine this use case. But it's like, okay, how would you describe what this does in 4 words? And in my mind, it's pre-sales case deflection. And then when you take it back to that level and you think about it, like deflecting future customer service cases before they've even bought the thing, I'm like, that's actually pretty powerful. Like, that's highly relevant to businesses looking to protect their brand experience. And so between the way you and I have kind of thought of Heroku and Data Cloud and MuleSoft and their relationship together, and being able to deliver such extensively proactive customer engagement facilitated through AI with this app on Heroku, Data Cloud, Data Lake model together, like what this is telling me is we're moving more and more in a direction in the Salesforce ecosystem, and potentially even outside the Salesforce ecosystem, where hosting your apps on Heroku supplemented with APIs from MuleSoft and Data Lake from Data Cloud, like this is going to become the best in breed solution for like all major online providers, because these close ties and the power that this brings to both ingest and then act on your data. And I got to be honest, a couple of the things we're going to talk about a little later related to the AI on Heroku stuff, because there are several very cool developments there beyond just like, oh, hey, they're going to start hosting inference models. There's a lot of crazy cool stuff there that I think plays into this nicely.
Well, this is something I told BK a couple of months ago when we were talking about this, and he particularly liked the quote. And it really comes down to this. Like you and I have been in the Salesforce industry for over a decade at this point. Like me in 2011, 2012, I got started.
Yeah.
And the thing is, back then, Salesforce is a CRM with the Force.com platform. You could do a lot. You're able to customize a ton on that platform. It's exceptionally powerful, but it's multi-tenant. And I remember a lot of the more complex use cases. This is pre-marketing cloud, pre-exact target purchase, all this other stuff. It's like, you know, we're just going to go with Microsoft because, you know, Microsoft has a CRM as like an afterthought, but you can build whatever you want using their Azure stack or just using their straight up .NET framework pre-Azure days.
Which, quick interjection,
but hold on, let me finish.
Demo is in .NET.
Yeah, because
on Heroku. Yeah, he's a .NET guy.
that's not officially supported. Still, but so David is a masochist. So we don't need to go into that. And yes, David, you can take that. But my point is that what I said is that we would often come up against a lot of customers that it was like Salesforce or Microsoft. And you got a lot of customers that would say, oh, we'll do Salesforce and Microsoft. But a lot of customers would just say, I mean, the CRM is important, but our business process is super complex. Like,
Yeah.
you know, Salesforce just like you're really stretched the limits of what it could do. Like we've had our horror, I would say, our war stories with like the territory lead reassignment process that took 36 hours to run because of Salesforce's multi-tenant limits back in 2014, pre-Heroku days. And I'm like, with Heroku on the marketplace now, like this is a couple of years ago, I'm like, there's really nothing that Microsoft has on Salesforce at this point when Heroku Enterprise exists. And now when you're looking at data lakes to utilize, whether it be Snowflake or whatever else that you guys are evaluating, you've got Data Cloud, which is still young. I'll still give it this, like it's still got some things to improve upon. But you've got Data Cloud now, you've got Heroku to build your apps, you've got the #1 CRM by market share and by honestly like engineering design, in my opinion, by far, which is also a great application development platform in its own right for very specific use cases. Like there is straight up no reason on a technical level to evaluate other platforms outside this ecosystem. Like you really can do pretty much anything on Salesforce utilizing Heroku, MuleSoft, Data Cloud. Like there's really nothing else that anyone has to offer from a feature to feature comparison standpoint. Anything that one system would lack, like you could potentially build on the other. And so when you're looking for that perfect fit, or you're looking for that very nuanced use case, like this is why these stories that we're starting to tell with these different tools become very powerful, because you'll see a lot of systems with smaller end CRMs or just little plugins or applets to do like this what you call it, Justin? Sales case deflection.
Oh, pre-sales case deflection.
Pre-sales case deflection, because you've seen that before. Like there are apps that will do just that specific use case, right? And it's like, well, you have to have their ERP, you have to use this, you have to buy into everything, right? Or it has to be very specific for like, oh, we support that in this narrow band. But that example that David illustrated for everyone at TDX, you can build that for your, like if you're like, that's not quite what we do here. It's like, because we have like 3 other vendors that all, like we have to build the thing before it gets there because we're doing furniture. And so it's like, it's not as easy just having like a defective like battery. It's like, we're actually have to construct it and something might happen along that. And then we might have something else in the warehouse that's similar, like maybe even an auto manufacturer. But it's like that whole process that David outlined can be tailor-made to your process.
Yes.
Like, and I think that's the thing that people need to understand, is that this is a very flexible tool with a lot of the stuff that was exceptionally painful that took a project for an enterprise level customer to do 2 years to accomplish more to build this out, even buying parts of it. Like you now have a lot of the pre-built parts already ready to go to assemble, like Lego blocks. There's some work you got to do. You got to put some stuff together. You got to build your own Lego molds in certain places, but you've got a lot of the pieces already there. You don't have to 3D print everything. You don't have to design everything. Yeah. And I think that's the thing that people really need to hone in on when about what you just said, is that this is just the tip of the iceberg, and this is the beginning of where you're able to really be creative and construct and design these systems to really fit your unique process. So let's move on from here, and let's talk about the second thing that you wanted to talk about, which is Heroku and its relationship with AI that you found.
Yes. So a couple really cool things that are coming out this year.
Let's take them one at a time because I
Yeah.
want to dive into it. Yeah.
So I'm trying to decide if I want to save the best for last or just dive into it.
Dive in.
All right.
Head first into the concrete.
Heroku Postgres with PG Vector add-on now officially supported, which now means that you can, for lack of a better term, without more coffee and me, vectorize your data on your Postgres so that it can be fed straight into AI and used for context. This is actually one of the applications that was demoed at Heroku's booth for TDX. They called it, what was it? Ask PDF. And so the Ask PDF app, and it's an open source demo application. So if you go on GitHub, you look for Ask PDF, you can find it from the Salesforce team, go through all the source code, see how they built it, upload your own version and mess with it. But what it does is you can upload any PDF file you want, like any document, that gets uploaded and run through PG Vector, and the PG database gets saved there. And the vector output is made available to, let's say, ChatGPT AI model. So with all of that in place, like one of the examples that they did, because they gave us a sneak preview of all these at the Heroku developer meetup. And since some of the Heroku team members are big nerds, like we had fun with it. Somebody loaded in like the Dungeons and Dragons basic rule set. And then they asked the AI, like, what are all the key features of the barbarian class? And it's just like boom, 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 boom. And this is no context being pulled from like the general AI. This is everything being fed in as context from the vector PDF. What's really cool about this, if you, I want to
when you say vector, so really quick, when you say
like
vector
PDF
PDF
database vector charting, so like you can store that in Postgres with PG.
So Justin, I know you're excited. Let me ask a question. So when you say PDF, you're not talking about PDFs like the file format.
No, you
are talking about
a
PDF.
PDF file to the app. You run it through PG Vector, and like all the text content of the PDF gets saved in the database in vector form. And then the AI is able to navigate your PDF in Postgres using the PG Vector add-on like it would any other vector database and navigate through it to like pull context and inform its answers. So there's several like pretty cool applications that can come from that. But what I wanted to call out, because I thought this was nuts, and this was a question that somebody asked at the Heroku Dev Meetup. They're like, okay, this thing you did with the PDFs it's pretty cool. Like, I like it, but we're all Salesforce customers as well. Like, what if I wanted to do that with my Salesforce data and just have all my Salesforce data be my context for my AI prompting? And when are you guys going to have that available? And it was funny because like Andy Fawcett, he's, for those of you who don't know, he's the VP of product over at Heroku. He just like snags the microphone really quick and he's like, you can do that today. And everybody's like, what? And it's like, it's really simple. You Heroku connect your data into Postgres database, run it through PG Vector to get the vector outputs of all the data, save that, and then feed that to your AI as context, and you're done. And when you think about that in the context of like anywhere where regulatory or compliance stuff matters, again, inside of the trust barrier of a private space, a shield private space, potentially just Heroku Connect or Shield Heroku Connect. So you've got all those pieces together and all of that there. And then you have your AI, and it's going to be pilot, I believe they said, by the end of this year. And I've already nagged everybody to make sure RadialSpark is on that list. But then you have your AI model hosted on Heroku inside of that trust barrier, having access to all the data that you synced over and that you vectorized. And now you have an AI that you can be like, hey, when was the last time I closed a deal with so-and-so? And they'll be like, oh yeah, when they worked at this account, this opportunity that you closed on this date, and just spit it at you. To me, that's crazy. Like, because I feel like some people are like, oh, AI is getting cool, but I'm really excited to see the day where we can do something like that. And that day is today. It is possible.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is very cool. Is that the add-on available to Postgres right now?
Yes.
Like
and
general
this is
GA?
not like a Heroku special add-on or anything. You get your Heroku Postgres database, and then on your Postgres database, you install the Postgres PG vector add-on. So this is just like, the PostGIS add-on for like GIS data, things like that. So they basically just expanded their generic Postgres add-on support to bring the rest of these features in. And I think that's crazy.
So when you're comparing and contrasting, it's like, all right, so I'm a data cloud prospect, right? It's like maybe I'm looking at data cloud like for the use case that you just went from Bilau's booth over to Fawcett's booth, and Fawcett's like, yo, you want to vectorize your database, feed an AI model? Got you covered. Just do it all on Heroku. What are some like, and again, we're not like, we should probably do a write-up on like where to do all these, but like high level, on the cuff, top two places, or one place where you do one and one place where you do it the other way. So one place for data cloud, one place for Heroku. What are your go-to use cases?
Well, so in my mind,
and you can also pick a both.
I was going to say,
cop out.
5-year-old
That's a cop out.
Ask why not both? Oh, because I'm 5.
I think the why not both? Like honestly, I could see in my head, and I think we should do a write-up on this to kind of go through the thought process. But I think both makes a lot of sense. But let's not take the cop out because it's a trivial answer. Where would you lean towards one versus another? Because I think both, like I think we've made the justification that you should be looking at both, and it's cool that now you can have vectorized data on Heroku and in Data Cloud. So if you needed to hand it off to a third-party AI that's already pre-built that does a very specific use case, Heroku is your data bus for that, like or is your hub, and it's there. You don't have to go to your Data Cloud straight away, which is more of a marketing focus. Like I get that. So in my mind, it really, and this itself might sound like a bit of a cop out, but I think the question comes down to, you have to ask yourself honestly, like, does my organization need a data lake yet? Like, what is the quantity of data we're dealing with? Because again, Data Cloud is still not cheap. They've been really maturing the feature set and expanding its capabilities, and I can't tell you how impressed I am with what I saw at TDX. But like, there's a price tag that goes with all the really cool features there. But if you go back and you ask yourself the basic question, like, Data Cloud is a data lake. Do I need a data lake for all my data? Is it worth that investment for the mass storage and putting everything in one place? Or is it smaller? Because I think what we've seen here is that you can rather effectively do both in both places. Odds are that, like, if you have applications on Heroku using data from your Data Cloud data lake, like, odds are that AI is going to exist on Heroku as well and just access the data lake as a data source. Where I was going to say my 5-year-old why not both answer is, like, if you want to vectorize your PDF files onto a native Heroku database and then like store the unvectored files in S3, things like that, that has a very strong leaning towards the Heroku side of the fence of, we're going to vectorize the files into Postgres. We're going to throw like the original PDFs up onto an S3 bucket, which we've provisioned through a Heroku add-on. It's all there and done. And then like all of our data, we're thrown into the data lake. And that way my AI on Heroku that is driving this experience with a customer can access all the file-based intelligence through the Heroku infrastructure and can access all the data intelligence through the Data Cloud data lake. And the Data Cloud data lake, whenever it sees something on its end, it can prompt my AI to do more interesting interactions and say like, oh, hey, heads up, this happened, be aware. And so that's where like that idea that there is very cool tooling on Heroku for the handling of files and providing context to AI through that. And the price point, I feel like those are the things that people need to technically think about when they're figuring out, what do I actually need for my AI driven experience? So we have a lot of pre-existing customers that have done data archival strategies using Bucketeer, S3, like all through Heroku, leveraging Heroku Connect, Salesforce Connect to do the hybrid CRM application design paradigm that we're known for and we love to promote for those customers that already have Salesforce. So it sounds like they're geared up to just leverage this straight away today. So when we're talking about, hey, you guys just need to start using AI somewhere. Well, now you don't you don't even have an excuse to be like, well, I don't have a vector database. It's like, boom, you have Heroku, you got your data there, you can
You're
vectorize
programmed.
it. Like,
You now have
start.
a vector database.
Start now. So that's cool. So where would you think, again, when you're looking at data cloud, evaluating data cloud as a data lake, and you're looking at Heroku, which can act as a data lake, to be fair, or at least a master data management solution.
Yeah.
What's the size, or what's the key contributing factor where you're like, all right, we should really be looking at data cloud? Because I think this will help out a lot of AEs when they're positioning, is it Heroku? Is it both? Is it one or the other? Like, because like you said, it could easily be both, but both also comes with the price tag.
Well, so I think it comes down to, as a business, depending on where you're at in your application journey, you're going to have potentially one of two priorities here. Rolling out AI enabled features, or updating, upgrading how you're handling your data lifecycle. Like, the whole purpose that data lakes exist is because businesses have realized that they generate just these massive volumes of data that are extremely cumbersome to work with. And they're like, we don't want to just throw this away. There's value in here. We want to be able to act on it, understand trends, see how things change over time. And so you have to figure out for your organization which of those priorities is coming first. And so, like, for a lot of our existing customers that might already have a data management lifecycle using Heroku, if they're like, I just want to get AI out there, they might be looking at the PG Vector add-on support and looking at integrating like either a ChatGPT or Heroku's locally hosted AI models into what they already have to begin acting on that and handling it. But then when they start looking at like their investment on the data lifecycle side, either if they want to do AI at a scale where it's like you end up, because David does a great job of explaining this, the idea that you're not asking one person to listen to a call and track 50 different keywords. Like, you'd have 50 people listening to a call, each tracking one keyword, so they're all focused on one thing, and then they prompt whatever needs to come out of that occurrence independently. And then when you bring all those prompts back together, you have a rather thorough and context sensitive way of handling like activations, for instance. So when you're getting to that point where you're like, I've got a whole bunch of potential things that I may want to kick off, I've got a massive amount of data I want to store, I'm already spending a certain amount on my data storage, where I'm like looking at the cost to upgrade where I'm currently holding my data to just moving it all to data cloud. And it's like, all right, that's a more reasonable step up, and I get access to the rest of this feature set. Like, I see there being like a growth where it's like you start rolling out AI on your Heroku only app. That prompts you to hold on to more and more data to feed that AI. And eventually that data just starts to be like, okay, I'm spending enough here that I want the extra benefits of this data cloud. And now I'm going to make that migration.
So in the ideal world, Heroku is like the starting point. Like, it's like, hey, like, it's like, we need, like, I've had a mutual friend of ours reached out to me, and she was like, dude, my boss came to me and said to the Salesforce team, you guys just need to start using AI. And they were going to go out and buy like 10 data cloud licenses so that they could get the vector database and start using AI. And they're like, dude, we don't even know what, like, there's no business use case driving it yet. Like, there's nothing there. Like, they don't know what they're going to use it for. All like that. The use case you specifically reached out and talked to me about with that we just talked here, where we're like, we're going to track like clicks on the page and where people are like getting hung up, and like that whole retail use case is completely irrelevant for them, like not even remotely relevant for their business. So they're like, I don't know what the heck we're supposed to do with this. And so what you're saying is, for the audience, it's like, listen, if you're in that situation, which a lot of businesses are, like they don't know where to start with AI, start on the Heroku side, start getting used to how vector databases work. And then when that grows, or if it's already grown and you're already dealing with a lot of data and you're already having those problems and you're trying to get at some of those metadata tagged inputs where you're able to then strategically leverage that to pass and drive different actions through all your other apps downstream, which is what Data Cloud is pre-set up to do, to take that streaming information and fire it back. If you're then looking for that specific use case, you should start looking there. But if you're like, I have no clue, I'm totally overwhelmed, it's like again, you can start today. Heroku Connect, Salesforce Connect, PG add-on, which costs nothing. It's just a Postgres add-on, it sounds like. So it's just added on there, like just to, so everyone knows, it's like Postgres is open source database. You have a hosted version for the data storage on Heroku, and they manage the upgrades for you and the backups, but it's still an open source database. So if you want to do ArcGIS, PostGIS, like
whatever you're throwing in, it's all there.
Yeah, so all that stuff's plugged in. So hey, I don't want to.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to put a pin on this one because was it accurate how I described it?
Yeah, what I wanted to tag on at the end there was just the idea, like in my mind, and maybe you disagree, Mike, but I feel like if we're talking about a green pastures customer, because it is different if you're talking about somebody who's already got an AI implemented or like their IT already has a data lake, that might change the order of operations. But if you're talking about like, hey, I'm a brand new company and I'm going to set up an app and I'm going to start generating data and doing this, and I want to leverage AI. I think the order of operations that you're going to see and that you're going to want to sell to is you want to capture the business with your customer by helping them get their app live. And like that's, hey, build on Heroku. Don't build on these other tools because it ties in closely with your CRM. All the same stuff we've been saying for years. Then once that's in, the next thing you sell is the AI functionality. And the reason why I'm saying that is like, yes, data lakes make AI more powerful, but AI use cases are what drive data hoarding. And I don't mean to say that unflatteringly, but the point is, if you have an AI that's driving something as a business, you're really seeing the value of, I'm going to keep every data point to feed back into the AI. So the AI drives the data collection, which then feeds the need for increased storage up until the point where you get to a data lake. And that's why I see that's the order of sale for like green pasture customers for like Salesforce. And that really should be the order of implementation for a Salesforce customers. They're thinking like, how am I going to build my company? Because it's all very organic.
Well, and also you said too, it's like even if they already have a pre-existing data lake and they're struggling to get their data out of it, this is where you look at MuleSoft and Heroku, and now you can have the vectorized database on Heroku, and then you can Trojan horse in Data Cloud down the road if you're a Salesforce AE, or even just realistically, it's like some data lake, like Data Cloud's data lake is set up in such a way with like specific it's built around marketing use cases and actionable data in that regard, where there's other data lakes that just don't care. So you might be like, maybe I want to have this one instead, like maybe this is more akin to the process that I'm working with, and so again, like that's stuff to think about. But let's put a pause there because there's more to talk about. So so we talked about that. What were the next, how do I want to ask this? We talked about what surprised you. We talked about AI. We talked about new features coming out for Heroku. What's the thing that stood out to you the most at the conference?
So I would say, like I said, the native Heroku AI models surprised me. The thing that I think stood out the most was the PG vector thing. But there's one more thing I'm actually really excited about, and that is Heroku's expanding partnership with AWS. This is currently, I believe, in beta on the Postgres Essential tier, but they are moving it, I don't want to say up market, but like upstream to the higher Postgres tiers over the course of this year. And this is the incorporation of AWS Aurora. And for the uninitiated, which I'm going to assume is Michael, you, and everybody else listening in, AWS Aurora is, in its most simplest terms, actual data storage as a service. Not just like infrastructure as a service, hey, I'm giving you a database, but like being able to buy data storage. So with AWS Aurora, what this means is on a Postgres Essential tier plan, you buy your Postgres plan, they provision the database, but then you can buy data storage add-ons for that database, like you would buy a data storage add-on for Salesforce. So once you buy the tier of Heroku Postgres plan you need for like number of connections, snapshot frequency, like all the other technical pieces. And you're like, now I'm just sizing for how much data I have. Or as anybody who's managed a Heroku application for a long enough time knows, like once you get to that point where you're about to trip the threshold on your database storage limit, you're like, okay, got to go do the follower migration to like upgrade to a larger size database plan and copy everything over and then make that the primary. Now you can just say, I'd like another 2 terabytes of storage, please.
Yeah, so
buy it.
So before you totally nerd out, which you already did.
All right,
so
yeah.
So the TLDR for that is that effectively, and I think most people are familiar with this. It's like, all right, I'm on, I'm not, these aren't real tiers, but I'm on the PG1 tier, which allows me 5 connections and it's like 500 gigabytes of storage and this much RAM, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, my app, like, you're like, okay, so my app, I need this much RAM and I only need 3 connections, but like blah, 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 500. And you're like, okay, cool. We'll start here. You build and you build your app. It goes live. It's great. Fire and forget. Like it's working with your customers. It's doing whatever it's doing. And then a year goes by, 6 months go by, and you're past the 500 gigs. And so you're like, okay, I want Postgres level 2. And so you go to Postgres level 2. It's like, that's awesome. You want Postgres level 2? That means you get 30 connections and you get 2 terabytes of storage. And you're like, whoa, I just need another 500 gigs and I'm not actually adding any more connections ever. And it's like, but you get a gigabyte of RAM. And you're like, I don't need that.
Yeah,
I don't need it.
Storage.
I literally just need more storage. It's like, but it's a bundle. And you're like, that's great, but I just want, can you give me just the storage? So what you're saying is with Aurora, like I could keep the database spec for the machine effectively as it is and just get more storage.
Keep the database spec. You can keep your database. Like that's the crazy thing, because with current plans, you're buying a database as a service. So like when they tell you like 500 gigs, the database is 500 gigs large. And when you run out of space, you've run out of space. The database is full. With Aurora, what they're basically saying, and I haven't done all the research to know what
your database size is infinite. You don't have to migrate it.
They're basically like, okay, your database was 500 gigs, and through the magic of technology, you've bought another 250 gigs. So your same database, same URL, same everything else. We're not messing with your setup. We've just added another 250 gigs to it. Now, anybody who's ever managed a database as a service, like you can do some pretty crazy things with a locally hosted database, bare metal, whatever. Like if you're controlling it all through PG admin, you can get pretty crazy. But like a lot of these database as a service, you buy your database and the database itself is kind of set in stone. Like it is what it is. And when you fill it up, you have to upgrade to a larger database, which actually means provisioning the larger database, copying all the data over into the larger database, and then connecting everything to that larger database as the new like application database. There's a whole transfer of data to the bigger, better. With Aurora, that's not necessary. You're just buying more storage. It's another one of those things where you're like, we always talk about how Heroku saves you all these unexpected costs on infrastructure and network engineers. Yeah. This is the kind of thing that like an infrastructure and network engineer does. They're like, oh, we need to make a bigger database than we have. Brand new database, set it up as a follower, copy everything over, rewire all of these things at the appropriate points in time to make sure the app doesn't go down while we get a bigger database. And now Heroku's like, do you like just like swipe your card and say, buy more, please? And it happens.
No, I mean, and again, with what we just talked about for the last hour is how AI and data cloud and hoarding your data, and AI leads to data hoarding, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Is why I think this is important.
Yeah, because this again just cuts down another barrier to entry for people when you're just like, well, crap, now I need to call RadialSpark because I got to migrate to a newer database. And we started off with a POC and it blew up, and I want to keep this data, but I don't know how. And it's not, just use, now that you're using with Aurora, like you just swipe, like you said, swipe the card and now you have more data.
And you simplify it, but that's kind of how your decision-making process can be, is you basically like, you launch your Heroku app and your AI, and then you hold data and you're like, more
Well-
data through Aurora, more data through Aurora, more data through Aurora, until your Aurora bill starts to look comparable to a data cloud bill. And you're like,
Yeah.
I think I'm going to pivot over to here. And
Well,
get
and again, it comes down to too being able to buy what you want. So instead of like, you know, with when you look at a car, like automotive sales, and you're looking at, you know, this package versus this package, and you're like, I want like 6 of the things in this new package, but I don't want the other 4. Like I actually like desperately don't want or don't care about, and I don't want to spend the extra $3,000, but I really want that. And you're like, that's like upgrading databases. You're like, you get all these connections and all this other stuff, and you're built to scale and blah blah blah. And you're like, that sounds fantastic. I'm never going to have more than 3 connections. I'm never going to use more than 32 gigabytes of RAM. I'm never going to do, like, I just need to handle the growth of this data right now. Like, and by never, I mean like for the next 3 to 4 years. Like in my visible roadmap, I do not see me needing this. I just need more data right now, or the app explodes. Like, give me the data, and it's like, oh, we could do that for the low price of just this. And that's really cool. I think that's awesome. So, Justin, since we've been talking for about an hour now, I know we definitely have been able to encapsulate the entire conference that you were there for 3 days for.
the whole
Easily,
thing.
the whole thing, just this hour.
Nothing else
But-
happened, guys.
Yeah, that's it. But is there anything you want to part on before we go? Like, obviously, I think we'll probably have some follow-ups and talk about some of this in future episodes, things that stood out that we aren't going to get here today. But is there something there at the event that you were like, this is really cool, and I didn't get a chance to talk about it, and I really want to get it in the last 5 minutes?
I was going to say, if we're going to talk about something cool, I'm going to step away from what we've talked about so far. Like, to put a pin in that, all I want everybody to know is like, Heroku and Salesforce are doing extremely cool things with their data products, specifically to support the advent of AI and what we're doing here. And I can't overstate how important I think this technology is going to be to succeed in the Salesforce ecosystem moving forward and differentiate yourself. Now, setting that aside and actually stepping away from Heroku for a bit, I did want to talk a little more generically about AI, because anybody who did go to TDX knows that the second you went up Moscone to the 2nd floor, right there front and center was the Einstein Lookout with all the new AI launches. And this includes Einstein Copilot, which, very quickly for the uninitiated, this is your ability to attach, connect, and authenticate any Gen AI chat model that you want to your Salesforce and your Salesforce data to act on it. That's including like OpenAI, ChatGPT 3.5 models, things like this, and connecting them to your Salesforce org so that you can have a really intelligent AI copilot while you're operating in your org. With that comes a couple other things that supplement it. There is the prompt builder, which is effectively like a developer skill set. And there are going to be, if they're not up now, they will be on Trailhead, certifications to go get, or at least badges, to like code the templates for the prompts that feed into these Copilot AIs and automatically handle some of the back and forth and refinement of a request to make sure that that AI is giving you the most valuable output from it. So there's basically the ability to create call it like a subsection of the conversation you would normally have with the AI, that it's like, okay, we can do better than that. Let me automate a follow-up request to it based on what you returned until it's like hits a certain point. So it's like templating the prompts you provide to it, automating responses to the AI from the initial prompt. If there are metrics or things that you're like, I want to get more detail, or I want to elaborate on this. And then additionally, there is what they call the model builder, which is the actual linking of AI models into your Salesforce and saying like, this is what my Einstein Copilot's going to be running when I'm talking to it and working with it. I wanted to call that out. I mean, AI is the big buzzword. It's the hot topic right now. I'm sure anybody who was there was aware, saw it was front and center. It was the biggest stage right up the escalator to go see it. But knowing that that's where Salesforce Core is, I wanted to call that out, because then when you think about what we're talking about with all this crazy stuff like inference models hosted on Heroku that can then be made available through Einstein Copilot Model Builder, leveraging data in a PG vector database, leveraging the data from your data cloud, like tying it all together, we're getting to a point where basically the most intelligent, interconnected business backend systems are going to comprise of external facing applications on Heroku, data lakes and data cloud, Einstein-enabled Salesforce orgs, and then MuleSoft API layers to connect everything outside of the ecosystem back into that central node. And we're going to see some crazy stuff happening with that combination of technology. So that's my like note to end on for you, Mike.
Well, I think that's a good place to end, and I think that honestly it is a great reason to be excited for 2024.
Yeah, if you can't tell, it was a busy trip, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a kid in a candy store right now.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, this is why we send you. This is why you got to go and I didn't get to go. Like, if we had to send one of us, then
I know.
well, Justin.
We'll have to talk to your wife about taking turns. She can watch the dogs next time. That way you and I can get up to some trouble together.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll call it there. I think we got through a lot. There'll be some follow-up too. Obviously, we're going to go into, just to prep for the upcoming episodes, we're going to go into some more detail on like some Heroku use cases as well, how it relates to Salesforce. Obviously, since AI is still a very hot topic and will be, we're going to be continuing to talk about that along with some other things that aren't just AI coming up. So we'll have some new articles, new episodes coming out in the next couple of weeks. So keep an eye out for that, everyone. And I think that's it for today. I think, unless there's something else you thought we missed or we really needed to talk about at TDX, I think we put a pin in it and call it quits. Get back to work, I guess, right? It's Monday.
I think we're good. The only other thing I could do is I'll do a quick shout out to my buddy Karen, former student from the Purple Maya Foundation. She was actually at the Heroku Developer Meetup, recognized my voice while I was blowing up the leadership team with questions. And so I want to say that as a quick shout out to her for hanging out. It was great running into her. But two, for any of you that listen along, if you ever want to meet my crazy self in person, I'm always going to these TDXs, World Tours, Dreamforce. So if you reach out to our team, let us know you're going to be there and you want to catch up, we would be more than happy to meet with you guys. So that's my last shout out for you, Mike.
That's awesome. All right. Well, hey guys, take care. We'll be back next week with a new episode since we took 1 week off, and then we'll probably go back into our normal cadence, assuming we're not traveling everywhere. But we're trying to get at least 2 a month so far. But guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us today, and look forward to you to next week. Take care, and we're